science fiction. We make no guarantees, however, how long it will remain fiction. Fiction. Fiction.
Ayla, you're on mute. Okay, well, welcome to Exofathom, everybody. I think Ayla's on mute, and she's unable to mute her mic for right now. Man, we are having such a hard time getting into this episode. So thank you for tuning in, and bear with us while we get Ayla back. And I think she's back now. It seems like she's unmuted. Hey, Ayla, can you hear us? Nope. Okay.
Oh, we got Robot Ayla.
We got Robot Ayla. Wonderful. All right. Well, I think, let's see.
What we need is one of those, like, little technical difficulties.
Like, yeah, I should have put a banner like that, man. That would have been awesome. Holy shit.
Really so good. Just like a little dancing Exofathom logo or something.
Yeah,
music. Like,
totally. And it's incredible because I think that Ayla's totally out for some reason. That's really messed up. We were trying to do an episode on Kali, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm going to try to tread water here while Ayla gets her thing set up.
Isn't she the goddess of, like, death and
destruction
and all that?
So it is only fitting that this happens to us at this moment.
Are we like the characters in Pet Sematary that bury the bodies on the Indian burial grounds? And yeah, this is our retribution or whatever.
Right. Yeah, totally. I'm trying to see if, because Ayla, she's all held up over on the other side of the house. So she's having some issues with the internet right now. She's saying that she's not able to get any internet at all, which is wonderful for what we're trying to do. And
you don't need that for podcasting. It'd be great.
No, of course not. So apparently she's got no bars here. And it doesn't want to start up. She's going in.
We spent like 15 minutes
working.
Yeah, solving technical issues, and then you hit the live button, and then everything goes out.
Everything falls apart in the middle of it. Oh yeah, this is wonderful. We're doing great here. And hold on, I think I got her back.
Am I back?
Can we cut?
Yes, I think you're back.
Oh, you're back.
Oh my gosh. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
That's so embarrassing. Like the goddess Kali, I have retreated to the nether worlds and I'm back. Hi.
The signal's a little fuzzy. I mean,
yeah.
It seems like Kali's trying to just drag you back there.
It is, but it's starting to work. Maybe if you lean forward a little bit, Ayla. Because it's like if you go into that corner of the room, it's just like no internet at all for some reason. I don't know what the hell is wrong with that.
Oh no, not a dead zone.
Okay.
Pretty much.
I'm gonna try to get up. Sorry, guys. Sorry. Oh, we are live. Why did I think we weren't live right now? I thought you. Okay, sorry guys. We have a lot of stuff. So if you don't know, earlier this month I shattered my knee. And I was just laying down, but I am sitting up for you beautiful people to make this audio work.
And it sounds
and you can hear me better. It does. Okay, great. So yeah, you guys missed my salutation, which was sexy salutation. That's partly because Kali is associated with sexuality, among other things. But first... deep breaths. How are you both doing tonight? I apologize if you covered this already.
No, we didn't. We were literally just bullshitting until we could get you back onto the feed. Yeah, doing okay. A little bumpy for a Monday, but that's to be expected. It is a Monday after all. So
right.
glad to have things up and running again.
Here, Mike.
And I'm just hanging in there. How are you doing?
I'm all right. I'm really actually excited to talk about this topic. We were going to talk about Kali last week, and I'm really glad we pushed it because it's such a dense topic. And I know we haven't really talked about any of the Hindu gods or the Hindu cosmology and faith. So it'll just be kind of like a nice overview episode. And one of the reasons I did pick this particular goddess is that she's associated with death, and I had a near-death experience on July 1st. My knee injury was really horrific. I can't even get into all of that, but let's just say I needed to be sedated with ketamine to have them straighten the leg and all that stuff. And during that time, I did stop breathing, and I saw the cosmos and the netherworlds. I died a little bit, came back, and what better episode to host than one on this goddess? So first, out of curiosity, what other gods of death come to mind? I know Anubis was one that stuck out in my head, but any gods that you guys think of just off the top of your head?
Hades, Anubis.
Hades, technically not a god I want to be that guy. Technically not a god of death. That responsibility goes to a god named Thanatos. And so it's like a completely different job requirement. The one that
job requirement.
Jobless, skill set. There we go. Sorry.
Right. Hades is like a babysitter.
Yeah, Hades just has his own realm to watch. He's like, I'm not dealing with bringing people here. You're the one that has to go find the dead people, bring them, and then there's another one that will also ride you down the river Styx, the ferryman. So there's that too. But yeah,
they'll ride you. Wow.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm keeping in with the Kali energy, just pleasure and all that good stuff.
Hey, so okay, well, cool.
So I mean, like, just exactly. So just keep kind of the idea of like gods of death in mind, because one of the things I've been thinking about a lot the past month has just been kind of like ancient knowledge. One of the examples I've been using is acupuncture, and acupuncture is something that we've yet to really have scientific proof about. There's levels of predictability, like people feel relief in X, Y, and Z situations, and that's enough to satisfy insurance companies who partially reimburse for acupuncture now. But that is a old art form or old healing practice. And like that, there's a lot of cultures that have just this ancient wisdom. And I think it's just so interesting to think about the huge body of knowledge that is available to us when we start to dive deep. So let's just talk a little bit about Kali. She's a Hindu goddess, also referred to sometimes as Kalika. And she's going to be the goddess of death, time, and doomsday, often associated with sexuality and violence. She also embodies Shakti, which is feminine energy, creativity, and fertility. And she's also representative of the fierce form of the mother goddess who terrifies the wicked. So I thought that's just like a really interesting combination of attributes. And we can get a little bit more into that later. Some people have said, doomsday, it's really like circular. So she's got these like creation phases, which is a creation, expansion, contraction, and dissolution. And it makes me think about like all the fires we have right now. In normal circumstances, a fire burns so that it helps clear the soil and create new growth. So I'm just curious, with the doomsday thing and just individuals and stuff, do you ever wonder about the difference between the demise of an individual versus the demise of a species? So like, I'm just thinking like, we accept that we all die, like, and that's just a part of the human experience. But what's funny is that we seem to have a really big issue if our species was going to die. And I think that's just kind of an interesting distinction that we're willing to
speak for yourself.
Yeah, like yield. I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe you won't. Maybe you'll be the first person who doesn't. That'd be cool. Take me with you. But just in terms of like goddesses and deaths and stuff like that, like any thoughts on that?
Oh, so there's the it's like a primal shock, because there's some ideas in Greek philosophy that lays in that we're each one of us is mortal, but as a species we are immortal. When maybe that's where it comes to, is just the notion, as far as like Western civilization goes, that we've had this idea that as a species we are immortal, but in reality, once this universe collapses, unless we find a way out of it, we're kind of screwed, unless the universe doesn't collapse. But I think I think eventually all life dies. And once all life dies, death will die, because death will have nothing to take with it. Right. But I think
fair points.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the primal fear, though, because we're living in the universe, right? We're a part of it. And we can't imagine anything outside of it. Yeah, I think that's where I want to end my idea.
Absolutely. And I mean, yeah, I don't know if there's a lag or anything, but I was just going to say that I like this idea. Oh, okay. Thank you, Nick. I like this idea of a collective immortality.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of a good way to sum it up. Nick, do you have any thoughts? I know there's a lag, so I will pause for you.
Oh no, No, I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to wrap my head around the statement. It's really hard to follow when the audio is doing what it's doing. So when it comes to the concept of like the death of a collective versus the death of an individual, I don't know. I mean, like I personally, like I can understand why it would be terrifying for the human species to sort of conceptualize the end of itself. But at some point too, it's like I think it's more important to focus on the individual. Like it. Yes, you can kind of think about maybe as I said, conceptualize this idea of a mass extinction for humanity, but really what you're ultimately probably, definitely not just probably, you're definitely going to encounter is the extinction of yourself first. I think a lot of humans throughout the millennia have thought that they were going to witness the total destruction of humanity, but that has yet to come to pass, thankfully. But I think there is something in us that kind of looks out for it, because it's like an archetypal, like, the goddess Kali. It's this archetype of some sort of existential terror that not only affects you, but affects everything that we know. And so therefore it becomes even bigger.
Yeah, that's really well said. And, I asked that question not to be glib or anything, but just to think about the sense that, death can be perceived as a transition into something else rather than like an end. And I feel like, it puts things into perspective when you separate the collective from the individual, because it is two things. And you're right. I think that there's something about just human biological drives to reproduce and to keep that progeny of life moving forward, that somehow some sort of like mass event would spark some sort of like deep terror. So just hold on to that terror, because speaking of it, her imagery is quite terrifying. So the artistic representation of Kali is pretty fearful. She's got kind of like a fighting pose and a necklace of severed heads. She has a skirt made of severed arms. Her tongue is often seen like sticking out, and she's often brandishing a knife that's dripping with blood. Let's see. Now in art, she's also portrayed with blue or black skin. She's usually naked. wearing some sort of a crown. And she does have multiple arms. Usually it's like 4, 8, 10, 12, or even 18. And I think that gets at her. She's also kind of known as like a demon slayer. So more arms, more ways to slay a demon. But also too, each of the arms holds a different object. So like a sword, a dagger, a trident, a cup, a drum, a chakra, a lotus bud, a whip, a noose, a bell, and a shield. And I just love that she has all of these elements at her disposal.
Is she also, sorry to cut you off, is she also the inspiration for that type of choreographed dance where the people stand in a line and then move their arms in unison?
I was wondering about that. I didn't get too far into the dance associations with Kali, but I did start wondering, she has her tongue out and very fearsome look, the eyes open. And I started to think about like the Maori tribes who also have like kind of similar dance styles, and just wondering to myself, and again, I started this with ancient knowledge, what is it that is about the emboldening of the eyes and the movement expression and the arms and the hand movements and things like that. What I can say is that she has 2 mudras that are often seen in her left hand. It'll be an Abhyaha mudra, which symbolizes protection, peace, and the dispelling of fear. And the right hand is a Varada mudra, which is a gesture of giving. The open hand with the fingers pointed to the ground represents supreme power and a readiness to grant wishes and bestow blessings to the believer. And I wanted to stop there because I thought these 2 mudras were really interesting ones, especially for a goddess of death. I'm just curious if you had any thoughts about those 2 mudras.
Yeah, I'm not, and not just the mudras themselves. I think there's a really interesting sort of quality about different types of cultures and their god systems. I find it really interesting when you have a god that is as sort of revered and seen as sort of pardon me, seen as a source of good or benevolence, but they're also fierce and very terrifying. Uh,
Yeah.
I think that that's kind of an interesting sort of holistic encapsulation of maybe perhaps a deity set or a deity, instead of having just an absolute good deity and an absolute bad deity. You have this good deity who is so ferocious and terrifying that she can slay all the evil because she's just as ferocious as the evil.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, I think that that's interesting because it kind of just shows you that, for as scary as she looks, she's also displaying these mudras, which would be positive things of protection and the eradication of evil beings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, kind of like this podcast, right? Like the first few minutes were awful, but if you stuck
Yeah.
around, we're going to get into the meat of it. We're going to untangle the universe is what we're going to do. Mike, what do you think about the mudras or just her depiction?
Well, it's pretty cool. Maybe a little edgy. No, I'm just kidding. I really enjoy it. Like, it gets close to like sort of Aztec gods as well, because they have the whole
The skirt.
I know, I'm just trying to remember the proper words for it. So, you have the as above, so below type thing, but their gods tended to be multiples, like love and death, and it formed one being. And it wasn't like we have in our Western culture and Christian cultures, absolute good and absolute evil, and they're sort of separated. You can maybe make some arguments there. We might get into that later, like maybe Friday or Monday, because I have an argument for that too. But there's like with that, it does remind me of these Aztec gods and goddesses where they had both a light and dark aspect of them that was formed into one single deity, which is always, like as Nick was saying, like a more, I guess, a holistic approach, and holistic, not Hellenistic, holistic approach that is kind of cool to see when you're used to one being absolute and the other one being the other absolute. It takes time to also to kind of work your brain back into that, or work your brain into those, or seeing the world in that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, for sure. And a little bit later, I get into just a quick question about like monotheism and polytheism, and a little bit of like the philosophical transition into one from the other. Now, just to pause on the mudras, have either of you had any experience meditating with a mudra or which a mudra, it's really just like your fingers, palms, maybe your hands, feet, or body. There are these positions that kind of create like a directed energy flow and can are said to evoke certain like emotions or feelings or states, internal wellness, and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely used the Luke Skywalker in Return of the Jedi mudra. When he's in Jabba's palace and he's got his hands clasped with his two index fingers pointed or
Right.
touching and his thumbs touching.
Mm-hmm.
I just actually kind of find that comforting for some reason, just doing that with my hands. So yeah, I mean, but I don't know if I've necessarily like purposely employed a mudra during meditation before, to be honest.
Okay.
Yeah, I have with mixed results. Like there's that same hand. I think I believe it comes from Zen Buddhism, where your fingertips are touching your. Or I'm sorry, no, that's a little different. The one I'm thinking of is I believe you have your left hand laid over your right hand, with your thumbs touching as you're sitting and meditating, and you use the tip of your tongue to touch the roof of your mouth to keep your chakras all connected and in line.
Right.
That is like preferred form of when I'm actively meditating. That's my preferred form. But I've also tried, and I always get like so shit at names. I can't remember any of them. The one where you have your left hand, your pinky finger, your ring finger closed, your index and middle finger pointed up towards the sky, and then your thumb sticking out. But then your other hand is laid out in your palm as you sit and meditate. So those are the two that I've tried, but the first one was always far more effective in getting me into a no mind state.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I wonder, because I've played with a couple mudras before, and I wonder if there's like a mind body feedback thing that's part of what's happening, because there's one where you have like your fists together and it's kind of like a confidence mudra or like an empowerment rooting mudra. And
Avatar.
is that Avatar?
Yeah, or Aang when he
Oh,
does
that is
his
Aang.
little wind ball.
That's right. That is him. Yeah. Well, and if you do it, you feel like you actually force your shoulders into an interesting like position. And I wonder too if just ruminating on it, knowing what it means, helps you to focus on that rather than like your shopping list or something like that. You know what I mean? Like I wonder if part of it's that physical action of intentionality.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that has to be part of it, because I know with the Zen one that I do, the whole point is to try to focus on your thumbs barely touching, not have them like resting on each other or not have them pull apart, but to just, that allows your mind to at least have a beginning point of focus. And you can work your way through that. So that I can see that where it becomes important to not just sort of, I guess, walk through the paces of it or step through the paces of it, to actually kind of completely understand what you're doing. At least try to do it at beginning in earnest as a student, right?
Yeah, I would imagine that it's it's the similar philosophy that yoga has, right? Where it's like if you really want to get into yoga, you need to make sure that you have your postures right, that you're holding the position correctly, that you can hold the position for a sustained period of time, and having that sort of regimentation allows your mind, to slip into that flow state where you're not thinking of anything else except for the task at hand.
Yeah. Well, and also too, okay, so let me back up. So part of it, the philosophy behind it is this idea of like connecting energy points. So like each of the 5 fingers can represent a different school, like fire, air, water, ether, earth. And by touching certain ones, you might be activating chakras, acupuncture points, reflex zones, or meridians. And I just think it's very interesting because like with yoga, some of the postures, what you're doing is like you're locking certain bodies so that you're really getting stretches in like the tendons or along the spine, which of course is going to maybe like align or activate your central nervous system or something like that. So it's just one of those things where it's like, there isn't any scientific proof that I could find about the effectiveness of mudras. But again, it's this ancient practice. And actually, their main deity, Shiva, is one of the ones that projected like 8 basic, like preliminary mudras. And then it kind of like evolved from there. And I just had to think to myself, like, if with acupuncture you're moving chakras or not chakras, chi, and you're doing like blood flow manipulation with mudras and like these different finger points, like think about reflexology. That's all feet and it's all these different points, and this about the hands. And I don't know, with brain scans, your hands actually occupy a very big part of your brain system because, think about like the opposable thumb, how important that is. Like there's a lot of brain space dedicated to hands. So I don't know if that, I mean, somebody should go study that, but do you guys? Yeah.
Go for it, Nick.
Oh, no, I was just going to refer to something that you had said, Mike, about the tongue on the top of the roof thing. So perhaps mudras, whereas, like you put your tongue to the roof of your mouth in order to close the microcosmic circuit, which is like a Taoist sort of philosophy. And so perhaps the mudras being an extension, they are literally extensions of our sort of like etheric body. Perhaps configuring those extensions in a particular way can help you, with multiple things, whether it's harnessing energy, whether it's circulating it back through your body, whether it's, whatever. But just the same way Mike was talking about tongue position while meditating, I think that mudras probably have a similar sort of thing where it's a configuration in order to optimize the energy flow.
And speaking of circuitry, I mean, if you have a circuit board or any sort of electronics, there's an infinite amount of way to sort of route that electricity, right? If our brain is nothing more than electrical impulses firing, it could be that sort of configuration that helps towards, I don't know, certain neurochemicals being dumped in certain combinations or something like that. And depending on the way that your hands form, you're rewiring your brain to get closer to something that allows for the proper amount of chemicals to be dumped to reach a flow state.
I like that you said flow state because you're reading my mind on that one. Like you're talking about like aligning these unseen energy forces or something like that. One of these theories that I read about it said that the mudra is about free electrons at the fingertips having concentrated nerve root endings that get redirected back internally to the brain along chosen neural circuits. Similar to acupressure and acupuncture, but a little bit different because I guess their theory was that like the tips of your fingers, that's the outward extension of like a big part of your body and your brain space that's occupied. And they also said that it could be involved in activating Kundalini energy. Now, I haven't done a lot of research on Kundalini. I've heard a lot about it. And a lot of people say they have really big reactions to Kundalini energy. But again, I love that you have Kundalini energy, you have mudras, and you have chi. And these are different, civilizations and cultures. And again, it's just, I don't know, whenever I think about it, and then I think about like, quantum science and, when we did the gateway experience discussion, there's a lot more chatter about unseen energy at work. And I just love it. I love it all.
Yeah,
Yeah, it
I
might
think
be.
that I think we're always trying to catch up to something that ancient people intuited, a long time ago.
Mhm.
I might be all describing the same thing too, just from different perspectives. Like one of my favorite ones about ancients intuiting things is just how ayahuasca is made. The if you it's these two separate plants that are put together, right? But each one, your body will actively filter and block out the hallucinogen that makes you trip, right? But if you mix these two plants right in the right way and do the proper procedure, you will create one of the most powerful hallucinogens known on this earth, right?
Hmm.
But how did ancients figure that out without having some sort of lab, without having some
Right.
sort of tech? And if you talk to the shaman, you find out that it was the gods that told them, some sort of intuition that guided them to create this healing thing that
Yeah.
reveals the truth of the universe to them.
Well, and it's interesting because it's like you see this in I forget what it's called, but it's that idea that like walnuts look like brains and they're good for your brain. Avocado looks like a little pregnant avocado. It's good for female fertility. I mean, like tons of
Ayurveda.
it. Yeah, well, yeah, there's also like this other concept that's relating to just this idea that like there's an encoding in our world that kind of drives some of the early actions that we might have taken. And yeah, and I love, Mike, what you said. Like, even if this stuff could have been like maybe uploaded or something like that through some mystical channels, like that we've lost that. Maybe not everybody's lost it, but that it was there at some point. And like maybe now we're taking science and wanting to circle back. Like I just love the just like the gap between that. I just love that. Um, well, did you guys want to talk anything more about that before I go into Hindu cosmology?
Mm. No, no, I think that that's pretty good. I do have a little Easter egg about Kali that I will get to if you don't mention it. So I'm not going to jump to that just yet in case you have that in the barrel. So go
Oh,
ahead.
awesome. Okay, cool. Well, so when I was learning about her, I have some stories, but it didn't really make sense unless I like understood the bigger picture. So it's not too much of a divergence. But let's see here. So one thing I read was that modern Hinduism is really divided into four major devotional sects. So you have Vaishnavism, Shaivism, Shaktiism, and Smartism. I really should have looked these up, but I'm so sorry. I'm doing my best. Now, two of them are regarded as monotheistic sects. So they believe in like a supreme god, which would be Shiva. And then two of them have more of this polytheistic callback. And this is where I wanted to ask a little bit about, you know, if you had to guess if there was God or multiple gods, like just personally, or a mix of both, what do you think it is?
Mm. I mean, I think that there's probably, my belief, anyways, for take that for what it's worth. I think there's one overarching God. Perhaps there's lesser beings that are above us, humans. But yeah, I would tend to believe, and that's just me being a Westerner. I would tend to stick to my monotheism.
All right. How about you, Mike?
I don't know. I've gone back and forth on the idea for decades now. It feels like it does. It like both cases kind of make sense. I feel like having one supreme god might be too much responsibility because that's a lot of work. When does God's got
It's
to
true.
chill? Like even in the Bible, right? God rested on the seventh day. Like it takes like a lot of work to just be done to run a whole universe. So I can kind of see where there's polytheism, where all the responsibilities are kind of divvied up, and they the stories at least become far more interesting. But I don't at this point in my life, I could just say I'm not too sure. But most of my rituals do fall to monotheism. They're monotheistic rituals that are based in Catholicism and I guess wider Christianity.
Hmm. I love that. Well, and yeah, and I go back and forth on this too. I feel like I used to be more mono in terms of like there's just kind of one God, but lately I've been feeling like you're right. Like there needs to be like a distribution of responsibility to some extent, and I think that like Nick likes to talk a lot about like archetypes, and we have archangels, we have different deities in different religions that break up different aspects of human experience or the universe. And I just thought it was really interesting, kind of thinking about what made that shift, because it was more of the ancient civilizations. They did have a lot of different gods. And then there was this kind of belief that there was one God. And so there's this, I forget what his title is, but his name is, that can't be his name. His name's like Ass Man. Okay.
Probably as man.
As man. Yeah, I think he's like a cultural anthropologist or something like that. But
you think he changed his name to that? Or you think he was God-given name?
God-given name.
Affleck and Mallrats.
Maybe. Well, he was talking about increasing connectivity between civilizations. So, as civilizations start to collide, they may have encouraged the belief in divine unity. So people drew connections between their own gods and those of other societies. They began to see different gods and pantheons not in opposition to one another, but as expressions of the same concept. Other people saw multiple gods as just different manifestations of one god.
You can thank us Persians for monotheism, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I believe that Ahura Mazda is considered like one of the first monotheistic gods, which is an ancient Persian.
Ah, well, and it makes sense too, because part of the other, history of it is that the civilizations with the one god tended to be a little bit more conquery. Then their god became everyone's god, and things kind of get pushed that way. And I think that's interesting too, because just, I don't know, I just was thinking about this today. Like, if I was a god of, I don't know, sunlight, right? And everybody worships me. I've got temples, I've got followers, specific prayers. And then all of a sudden that just goes away because like one other group says like Timmy down the street is the one god. And I'm like, no, okay, look, Timmy's great. But yeah, I don't know. Like,
and that's what the show American Gods is about. It's a Neil Gaiman book as well. But it's like this concept that there's a whole bunch of old gods and like all these gods are real, but over time people believe in them less and less, so they become kind of shells of themselves, and this new hierarchy of gods comes in. One is like media, the other is like internet.
Oh man,
like globalism is one of them.
I need to read his stuff. I keep hearing his name.
It's an interesting show and an interesting concept, because you have like characters like Odin. Odin's one of those, and he comes to America basically through the Vikings that landed in America way before Columbus, and he talks about how like he loses so much of his relevance because nobody believes in Odin anymore, whereas like he has a contemporary Vulcan who finds a niche in weapons manufacturing, because Vulcan was the manufacturer of the lightning bolts for Zeus. Now he's making guns and bullets in America, and so he retains a lot of his power.
Wow. Yeah. Well, yeah. And that gets right into my next question, which was like, how do you think society, at least here in America, would look different if we still had temples that were devoted to different deities? People that like ran in these little sects, and you could go pray for specific things, kind of like that, but maybe not like a weapon god, but maybe like the old Odin, like okay, we're in Long Beach here. Imagine you could go to Anaheim and there's like this temple to Odin, and you can like, I don't know, I think it would be so cool. I kind of want that back, like some of the old mysticism.
America doesn't have that because I don't think the natives really built monuments and temples. But if you go south of the border, you have, the temple of the sun god and all of that stuff, and the Mayan religions and the pyramids, and like these were all monuments to old gods. So I just don't think we have that in America as much, just because of the sort of more nomadic nature of natives.
Yeah, and you can. So yeah, south of the border it gets kind of interesting because a lot of those temples and monuments were restructured to Catholic churches. And what the natives would do would be, instead of going inside and serving or practicing service, they would pray to the church itself, still praying to the old gods. And some of you can actually map some of those old gods to characters in the Bible, which is why some people think that in Mexico it's such a strong Catholic country. They've just forgotten that, like, after generations you lose knowledge, so you forget that Quetzalcoatl is actually the Virgin Mary or something like that, and then you just pray to the Virgin Mary. And after enough generations, that solidifies itself and it's still there in relevant text form. But this brings up a deeper question on if God or gods live in the heart or they need somewhere physical.
That's a great question.
Because I do believe that gods and any sort of worship begins in the heart. And in that way, your home, no matter how ordinary it looks, if you set up your signs and your symbols well enough, it can become a shrine to any god you want.
I'll second that. I used to think that I needed to have really relaxing music on, burn sage, settle in. I had, when I would pray or meditate in the past, there was a little bit more pomp and circumstance to it. And at least for the past month and a half with this injury, this is probably TMI, but my most God connection moments were in the morning on the toilet, because I would wake up at 5 in the morning, 6 in the morning, and I'd have to go, and the sun would be coming right through the window at that time, and I would feel this heat on my right shoulder, and I was pretty miserable, and in the morning especially so, because everything's stiff, and then all of a sudden I would just become aware of this heat on my shoulder, and I know it was just sunlight, but at the same time there was this feeling like I'm being held right now. Yeah, and it just was in my heart.
Yeah, there's always something sacred about the first dawn's light, and that warmth, that first warmth that comes in at sunrise. For sure, I can see it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and there's a whole bunch of sun worshippers that they don't talk about from, I think, Greek times, which are pretty cool to do an episode about. But back to the Hindu cosmology, they have this idea that there's basically 4 major goals of human life. That's going to be Artha, Kama, Dharma, and Moksha. And I can go down all 4 of them. And Moksha is going to be the one that brings us back to Kali. So I'm sorry for the long divergence, but it's going to be good. So Artha, that's really just the pursuit of wealth or material advantage. It's also tied to activities of statecraft, which means the general social order of things, preventing anarchy. Kama refers to love, desire, and pleasure. Dharma is the religious and moral law governing individual conduct and is one of the 4 ends of life. And then you have moksha, which in Indian philosophy and religion refers to liberation from the cycle of death and rebirth, or samsara. This concept of liberation or release is shared by a wide spectrum of religious traditions, including Buddhism and Jainism. Is that how you say that? Jainism. And nirvana itself is a common concept in Buddhism, a state of realization that there is no self, no soul, emptiness. Meanwhile, moksha is a concept commonly in many schools of Hinduism, acceptance of self, realization of liberating knowledge, the consciousness of oneness with Brahman and all existence. But what I think is really interesting with moksha is that it's a paradox in the sense that overcoming desires also includes overcoming the desire for moksha itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like dropping the banana, right?
Dropping the banana.
Sorry, that's an inside thing that most people don't understand. But when I was brainwashed when I was 16, they talked about this concept of it was like an experiment they did on monkeys or chimps or maybe macaques or something like that. They put a banana in a jar, and the jar has an opening that's big enough to get your hand in, but once you close your hand and make a fist, not big enough to pull out. What they realized, and I think this actually might have been a technique for hunting monkeys back in the day too. So I might need a fact check on that. But what you do is you put a banana in a jar, or something like that, and the monkey goes in, grabs the banana. Now you got a monkey that has a giant jar attached to their hand, and they flail around and they go crazy. When all they have to do is let go of the banana, and they would be free. It's the same sort of concept of like, you have to let go of that thing that you're aiming for sometimes, and even in order to get there, you have to almost let it go. And that's a very Buddhist thing. It's like, you got to let go of any wants for anything if you ever want to be, in paradise. You can never want anything ever. And, yeah.
Especially not wanting.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, you can't even want to not want.
You just have to not. You just have to not want.
Yes.
Well, and I love that there's a Simpsons episode where Homer gets his arm stuck in a vending machine because he put his arm in there to grab like a piece of candy, and then but he couldn't get his arm out, and they're like, "Well, just let go of the candy," and he's like, "What?"
Never.
The whole point in the beginning. Why did I do this?
What sorcery is this? Mike, anything to add to that?
I mean, it makes sense. I mean, you find that in other things, right? Like we were just saying, like in Buddhism and whatnot. But I think that kind of like harkens on life's paradox, right? Like if you want to be a good person, you just don't build a desire to try to be good. You just be good, right? And then hopefully that gets you on to the next place. There has to be some sort of punishment, stating that like if you're not good, then you don't do this. Like one can make an argument that you've never been good from the get-go, because you needed some sort of law or some sort of religion to punish you, right?
Yeah, it becomes kind of a paradox.
Yeah, and the Greeks, there's some Greeks cynics that worry that laws are useless for people because good humans don't need them, and bad people, it rarely ever changes them.
Yeah, they just get better at not getting caught.
Yeah, exactly. But it's that sort of paradox thing, right? And yeah, you have to find freedom from even that, because that will drive you mad.
Yeah, it's so funny. Madness. I keep thinking of that Laz Berman guy. Anyway, sorry, that's like a divergence. But no, I mean 100%. And like that gets into the nature of the like human nature and eternal justice versus mortal justice. The great beyond, if it exists, is there justice? If it doesn't, do we need to implement it here? Yada yada. Getting back to Kali, and this is like the meat of this episode, so I hope everyone's sticking with us. The concept of moksha and ego death, and Kali and the beyond. So Kali is seen as the divine protector and the one who bestows moksha or liberation. Kali is often portrayed standing or dancing on her consort, the Hindu god Shiva, who lies calm and prostrate behind her or beneath her. And I thought this was an interesting point to bring up because, as I started out in the beginning, death is so often scary. And, when you think about the individual and civilization, we want to just keep living. And yet here there's this shift of it where death is really this ego death. It's this transition, and that the person who is the goddess of death is seen as the actual protector and a liberator of your soul, basically, or your essence, maybe. So she carries this sword and the severed human head. It symbolizes like the ego, basically. Is somebody whistling, or is that just audio?
It's just audio.
Okay, I was like, who's whistling? Like, because I thought maybe you were trying to get my attention. Okay, so she has this severed human head. She has her sword. The head symbolizes ego, which must be slain with the sword of divine knowledge in order to attain moksha. Devotees who fall to her feet in devotion and surrender of the ego, they hope to gain moksha by the grace of her touch. And I think it's really interesting that Shiva himself is at the feet of her, right? So Shiva is supposed to be kind of like the top deity, and yet he's under Kali. So she's kind of like, I don't know if she's necessarily like the wife of Shiva, but she's kind of like a consort of. And let's see. Well, it was just this idea that he kind of has this like calming presence over her, and she has more of like a chaotic nature. And we'll get to that a little bit later. Let's see here. Yeah, oh yeah. So he's the supreme being in Shaivism, and it reminds me of Anubis again. So Shiva might be supreme, but the fact that she stands on him makes me wonder if she's kind of like Hamdel, or the gatekeeper to this moksha enlightenment. So that like maybe Shiva is kind of like the earth's top god, but she's this like gatekeeper to other realms, transcendence, something else. And I thought that was kind of interesting. There's no like real backing for that. I just kind of was thinking about that. Because even like with Anubis, he's kind of like this gatekeeper figure too.
Yeah, I mean, like it also could just be this the concept that death is is even possible for gods. You know what I mean? And that sometimes they cannot escape death itself, and so perhaps because of that eventuality or inevitability, she has a kind of a higher rung on the totem pole, because it's the same concept of Nyx in Greek mythology, the primordial chaos that everything comes from. She's the goddess of darkness and chaos and basically nothingness. And from her, everything comes. So there's this definite through line of this sort of like destruction god, death god being a pivotal and integral and probably one of the most important pieces of a god pantheon.
Love that. Mike, anything?
No, I mean, I think that's pretty selfish. I do kind of wonder if there is like we might be imparting some Western view of hierarchy on it, because this also runs into issues with like Aztec cosmology, when there is no hierarchy. Just from our cultural backgrounds, we tend to put one. But the more I think about it, the more it makes sense. I mean, life can be somewhat chaotic, but it's not as chaotic as whatever happens after death, right? Just because we don't know what happens. So whatever embodies chaos and is the embodiment of death, and yeah, that works. And then as far as the if the hierarchy actually exists next there, like we even have the old saying, behind every great man is a greater woman or something, or a great woman. That can hold true for gods as well, because humans are the ones who are kind of writing this stuff down, right? Or if we're a reflection of the gods, then that would also still hold true. So yeah, it all kind of works together, and it's pretty cool.
I love it. Well, so let me share the origin story. It's just a paragraph, and it's going to give a little more insight into, I think, just kind of this idea of chaos. And yeah, let me just read it and we'll get there. So there are several traditions of how Kali came into existence. One version relates when the warrior goddess Durga, who has 10 arms, each carrying a weapon, and she rode on a lion or a tiger in battle, fought with Mahisa, the buffalo demon. So Durga became so enraged that her anger burst from her forehead in the form of Kali. Once born, the black goddess went wild and ate all the demons she came across, stringing all of their heads on a chain, which she wore around her neck. It seemed impossible to calm Kali's bloody attacks, which now extended to any wrongdoers, and both people and gods were at a loss of what to do. Fortunately, the mighty Shiva stopped Kali's destructive rampage by lying down in her path, and when the goddess realized just who she was standing on, she finally calmed down. And from the story, from this story is explained Kali's association with battlegrounds and areas where cremation is carried out. Now, again, with Shiva, one of the most important gods in the Hindu pantheon, he's also kind of like a complex character. He may represent goodness, benevolence, and serve as the protector, but he's also associated with time, and particularly as the destroyer and creator of all things. And I just thought this was interesting as I was reflecting on it, because time is a human concept, right? Like, we kind of just made it up, and it's relative to our earth and how we circulate the sun. Meanwhile, Kali also shares the meaning of time, or the fullness of time, with the masculine noun kala, which by extension is time as, quote, changing aspect of nature that brings things to life or death. So it's kind of like, yeah, like the same thing and then not the same thing. And their connection is really interesting to me because he was able to meet her ferocity with like a gentleness. And I just thought that was a really beautiful image in her creation story.
Mhm.
And I can go a little bit more, but any kind of thoughts on that kind of stuff?
Yeah, you got to my Easter egg.
Oh,
Which
yay.
is why, I made sure I didn't say it until I made sure you weren't going to say it. But this story, the story of how Kali sort of is born from the brow of, is it Durga, yeah, and then she kind of goes on this rampage, right, and destroys everything in her path. That totally reminded me of Sekhmet from our vampire episode.
Oh,
If you guys
right.
remember, Sekhmet was this Egyptian goddess of sort of, violence and chaos, much like Kali, to be honest. Same sort of death and destruction goddess. And she also went on rampages and was only satiated when I think when she drank the Nile or something like that, because she thought it was blood.
Right.
But yeah, it definitely reminded me of the same sort of vibes, and Sekhmet being sort of one of the precursors to vampirism. I wonder if there's any sort of connections between Kali and Sekhmet, especially since Egypt being a hub of the ancient world. There could have been a lot of commingling of deities back then.
Well, yeah, and I love the idea of kind of like just on a maybe like interpersonal level, when somebody is really angry and destroying and just mean, that usually is coming from some sort of like wound. And if somebody expresses compassion towards that person, like if anybody's worked customer service, right, you get that angry customer, and if you just kind of pepper them with presence, kindness, and empathy and compassion, they tend to kind of be like disarmed. And I think that's also just like a really beautiful thing, to be the disarming person is to be like Shiva, is to be godly, which thinks of like the golden rule,
The
and there's,
lamb.
yeah, exactly.
It's like the nice little moral in that story, right? How that anger was soothed by just simply laying down in the path and not trying to fight or not trying to even stop her, right? And just lay down. It's like, well, if you're gonna kill me, you're gonna kill me. So it's fine. And that, yeah, it's like a nice little moral telling. It's usually in interpersonal relationships with like friends and stuff, you don't do anybody a service by stoking flames of anger, right? It's always better to try to be that soothing person.
Absolutely. And let me just see here. Well, and to get into this concept too, because it's like the more you start to I don't know, like some of these stories when I first read them, I was like, lots of names, stuff happening, articles of clothing, heads. It didn't like resonate. And then it's like you have to kind of ponder a little deeper. You have to ponder about the like goals and the cosmology of everything and the interplay to really be like, oh, and these like themes start to emerge. And one thing that some scholars would say is it is never Kali who tames Shiva, but Shiva who must calm Kali. And in relation to Shiva, Kali appears to play the opposite role from that of Parvati, who's another consort of Shiva, not wife, just like there's relations there. Now, Parvati calms Shiva, counterbalancing his antisocial or destructive tendencies, because he's both like creation and destruction. But she brings him within the sphere of domesticity, and with her soft glances urges him to moderate the destructive aspects of his Tandava dance. Whereas Kali, Shiva's other wife, provokes him and encourages him in his mad antisocial disruptive habits. And it is never Kali who tames him. It's like you can't have both people acting like that. So she kind of sparks his calmness the other way. And I thought that was two cool ways to kind of get at that like submission or surrender or extreme empathy. Um, and I also thought about it in the sense, perhaps in this story, Kali is like this chaos, and Shiva is organization, non-human to human. And it makes sense because Kali's also been called the mother of the universe. And the universe, as we know, was all this crazy primordial chaos. And as humans emerged, one of the things we do is we bring order to our world and we organize it with language and things like that. Um, so I can get a little bit more into that consciousness discussion, but how are we feeling? Does that kind of jive or anything new or?
Yeah, no, I mean it makes sense. Most ancient primordial precursor gods are that of chaos,
Mhm.
and the next generation of deities are always having to conquer the old generation. Whether it's you go back to Mesopotamia, you have Marduk who has to slay Tiamat, and I forget the other one, but Tiamat is this great vast ocean of nothingness, and it's like a
Mm.
cosmic chaos. And Marduk, the sort of Zeus of Mesopotamia, has to conquer Tiamat, and by slaying Tiamat, Marduk is able to cut Tiamat up and create the universe with her. And it's
Yeah.
that same sort of commentary about having to create order, and humans are very regimented and orderly, and we like to put our chaos in little boxes that we can predict.
Right,
Little
right.
boxes of chaos. It's pretty funny. It's pretty good.
With a little bit.
Uh, I don't. I like the contraction and expansion though. Like, I think it just depends on the human how orderly they desire to be. Because in my life, I've found that only when I was able to become more chaotic than before that I've been able to become more orderly than before. And it comes maybe from like a healthy, like a wide breadth of people that you have relationships with. Take it however you mean it. And from there, you can start to destroy some parts of yourself and with one person or one group of people, and then construct yourself up in a different way. And you find yourself growing in different directions and start to see that in those different groups, they have their own shortcomings, right? We all have our own shortcomings, but you can recognize it because you're like, oh, I used to do that thing. Maybe I was destructive in this manner, or maybe I was a little bit too anal in this manner, and those things I had to change, but only by pushing out more into chaos and then coming back into order, and then going back out into chaos and coming back into order. Was I able to try to see those things, or even be aware of them? Which I kind of like the whole relationship between the gods and the goddesses, or between Shiva and the consorts in that way.
Hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's like if you were Shiva in the middle, kind of like this. I mean, like some people will say that we all inhibit this like divine essence. And so if we are all in some point Shiva, then it's like we can be sparked to calm.
It's the angel and the devil on your shoulder.
Yeah, exactly. And I thought it was interesting too that like Kali can be said to symbolize the universal, unchanging aspect of reality or pure consciousness. So it's like you were saying earlier, Nick, you can have gods that have this duality within them. And you can have gods who spark a duality beyond them. And I thought that was kind of a cool thing because Kali, she can represent nature or matter, and consciousness and energy are dependent upon each other. And since Shiva depends on Shakti or energy in order to fulfill his role in creation, preservation, and destruction. Without Shakti, Shiva is a corpse unable to act. And, again, this gets a little bit more into the ethers, but when you look at kind of the energetics that are happening between them, I love it, Um, and one of the other things that I think is cool is, she's got either black skin or blue skin in most of like the art pieces that are made of her. And that can be said to refer to time and the universe, or rather the existence of God before everything. Sometimes she is blue with the limitless sky as well. And from a distance, once the ocean water is blue, but when you get closer to it, it's colorless, or without the sun or the atmosphere, it changes colors. So it's just this idea of her kind of being associated with the beyond and the prior, which I love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, the sort of the primordial. It's antimatter.
Yeah.
Or what are they calling it now? Dark matter. Like the stuff that's 90% of the universe that we don't really understand. It's like this is the same. This is what it would be if you wanted to turn it into a deity. It would be somebody like Kali or Nyx or these primordial chaos deities, because there's, most of our universe is just this intangible, unknowable energy that is there but not there, and we can't really understand what it is. And it helps matter form, and it has some sort of play on the universe that we don't really understand. And so, yeah, I kind of see it like that, where it's like, maybe one day when we find out what dark matter is, we'll realize that it's just Kali pulling the strings of the universe.
I love it. I'm feeling you. I'm feeling you 100%. And it's funny because for some reason her name has been in my head as like, you really need to go study this more. And yeah, I mean, this idea of the great beyond, let's remember she is the bestower of moksha. That's the liberation from reincarnation. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it's
Yeah.
like
I'm going to liberate you from life.
Right. And
finally.
It's just finally. And I think it's really funny because I did have this near-death experience, and one of the things that I remember was that okay, so first I'm like me floating through the cosmos, and the cosmos is like a lava lamp, like feeding into itself, like this weird snaking pattern. It was brown. It was almost colorless at first. And then and I'm there like, oh my God, what is happening? I'm Ayla. I had a busted leg. Now I'm like what's going on? And eventually at some point, I think it was right when I heard in the room they saying like I stopped breathing, and then like I got sucked into this wormhole. And what was weird about that was that it was this extreme disassociation. Like I was obviously stressed, like, no, I don't want to die. But then it was like, who am I? What's not dying? What's dying? Who's dying? What's death? What's alive? Where was I? Where am I going? What is this? Like, it was bizarre. And even like when I would say, what is this? There was nothing to sense what this was. There was no sound. There's no sight, no touch. It was just like extreme non-existence, but it was an existence. And it was like really just, to me, when I was reading a little bit more about Kali and this idea of moksha, you know, I don't know. I mean, I remember being there and like everything was fine, but it's also like it's not fine. It's because I still had some of my ego left, and I believe that's probably why I came back. But like yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, have you guys ever had an experience where you felt like you were pretty close to an ego death, or maybe you just weren't you anymore?
Yeah, it's terrifying. No, sometimes I think about what death is, and I will immediately snap into a voidless black, and I immediately snap myself out of it because I'm like, okay, don't need to go there. When you conceptualize an endless void of nothingness where you're nothing and nothing happens, and there's, you have no more memories of the things that you were.
Yeah.
It is.
And that's liberation. Like,
and that is
vacation.
It's a vacation. It depends on your perspective, I guess. It depends on whether you value life or not, I guess.
Ayla, did you feel the passage of time at all?
No. Oh, Ayla? Oh.
Yeah, Ayla.
Not while I was in the ego death experience, but yeah, no, I mean, it wasn't time. It was more like I could just see different lives and realities like snaking into one another. And everything was limitless. There wasn't really time. Yeah. I mean, you're just like extremely present in the outer world.
Was there like there was some sort of sequence of events though? Or could you put what things that like happened before another thing, or did it feel like it all? Yeah, did it all happen at once?
Oh, hard to say. Because my memory is a little bit fuzzy, and also too, like, one of the things is that like the more I understood the non-being, the less I was going to be able to come back. And so I had this opportunity to like see more of everything, but I also knew that like there was a point of no return, I think. So you only see a little bit and you don't get to see all of it unless you die. So I didn't want to do that. And even like trying to come back, it was hard to remember how to become a human again. It was almost like I had disintegrated, and I stopped having words to contemplate what was happening. And I just knew that like, oh, I know what happened. I was in all of that, and then this like fold opened in my periphery, and I caught a glimpse of Nick's face. And I was like, I want him. I want to come back to that. Where is that? What is that? I need that. But it wasn't like a thought. It was like a feeling. And then, now I'm like starting to get misty-eyed about it because,
yeah.
Story. Huh?
It's a heavy story, but
it's worthy of inspecting.
Yeah. Well, then, Nick, you said you didn't feel any passage of time in that beautiful void.
Oh no, I don't go there very often. Sometimes I teleport my mind there just to think about it for a second. But the moment you feel the nothingness, I'm like, okay, no, I'm good. I'm good. Mm-hmm. You can keep me from all. You can keep all that. You can keep all that.
I will be reincarnating.
That's just for the birds. Yeah, keep me in this loop, baby. I'm good.
I love it.
Ayla needs a face in the next life to flash to.
There you go.
Oh man. Well, and you know what's weird too, and this will be my last little story from the beyond, is that everything is accessible to you the moment you think of it. So that was the other thing, was that like the consciousness of it. Like I remember feeling like scared, and suddenly like somebody was with me to make me not feel scared. And then I remember like being kind of intrigued, like, where am I? And then it's like you go deeper into it. And then it's like, wait, no, because I want to come back. So then you come back a little bit, but then you're intrigued. And like, it was just this really weird thing where you really get to choose if you want to go or if you want to stay, or if you want to see the time knife, or if you want to, like, I don't know, see Jupiter or something like that. And like, just thinking of now about like the gateway experiments and stuff like that, and meditation, or even just like neuroscience, the brain is really powerful, and whatever you focus on, you definitely amplify.
Or like
And
the movie Flatliners.
I don't think I've seen that.
Yeah, it's basically a movie where they realize that, like, so it's like these people who decide that, the moments before you die is when you get this experience to see beyond the veil. And so they all, so they're like, it's a group of like, I guess they're like college people, academics. So
Pre-med.
they start to like medically almost kill each other and then bring each other back right before they die so that they could, document the after death experience.
Dang.
Yeah, it's pretty cool concept for a movie.
I might have to check that out. Yeah, well, I'm definitely going to kind of like investigate a little bit more, because also too, it's like, you talked about time, Mike, and at one point I thought I was in a coma for 40 days and 40 nights. And like I felt every single one of those days. And then I woke up and I was asking Nick, like, how long was I gone? And he was like, 20 minutes or however long. I don't know exactly. But
yeah, it wasn't very long.
There's a movie too. I forget what it's called. It came out recently where, is it like Comatose? I feel like that would be too on the nose, but it might be Comatose. But basically this guy just wakes up in a room in this weird world, and he has this power to manifest anything in this world, kind of. And he joins these other people, and it turns out that it's a collective world of people in comas. And time in this world, they all have like special powers and crap. But time ends up going by much slower in the coma world versus real life. So some of them are like thousands of years old in the coma world.
oh, wow. I believe it. I absolutely believe it. I mean, again, too, like I think, like I watched What Dreams May Come, and that's also very much about like the mind creates your heaven or it creates your hell, and it could even create a hell of heaven or a heaven of hell. And I think those kinds of sayings have been around. I feel like Shakespeare said something to that effect. All of the Greek philosophers. Um, and it's interesting because even that is a heaven hell duality. It doesn't talk about non existence, and it doesn't talk about non existence as being a good thing or a liberation of things. And this is where I get back to this ancient knowledge, and like if we with our minds have the power to direct that kind of focus, then doesn't it stand to reason that we should cultivate in our lives an understanding of the beyond that would make it acceptable for us?
So
Because
like
we're all going to
slip
go there.
into non-existence, because like there's like a bit of the ego thing, right? It's like you're holding on to life or death and life or heaven and hell, right? That weird notion that nothing's there, that it's just one big giant abyss, is terrifying, right? Which is weird that the most chaotic thing is nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Right, right.
Yeah, it might be because it's unimaginable. I'm not too sure why there's a when you first touch on the idea, it's like a reflex. I don't know if it's like a biological reflex to kind of want to pull back into the idea that the life death cycle, reincarnation, all that, or if it's if it's just terrifying for our brain.
Yeah,
but I think it's a reflex though. But you can push past that, which is what the point of Kali would be, right? To break that, to get through those gates and get into accepting sort of the non-existence, being like, oh look, that's face. I remember that face, and you keep going forward. Not you, Ayla, but just
One.
in general. Yeah,
Yeah.
somebody, some human.
Right. Well, and I think that's the thing is when I was talking about like you either go deeper or you stay, there's a recognition that like the only reason Ayla is scared is because Ayla is still Ayla. The minute I cease to be me, there's no me to be terrified to lose. And it's that paradox that is like, Kali, man. Like, I don't know. It's like the really weird concept. I don't know that it makes me feel any better because I'm still me, but
Yeah, this sounds to me like a commie psyop to be. Give up your individuality and join the formless collective.
One of us. One of us. Are you sure this isn't just your brainwashing being triggered up there?
Oh man,
Defense protocols being called in.
Oh, that's funny. That's and so that's what I was thinking about too. Was that like so I guess maybe I didn't say that very well, but like Mormons, for example, they have a really cool afterlife, which is that like you go into like your own world and the person you married is with you forever, and like everybody, like it's like this
It's the good
real
place.
yeah, it's like a really specific destination, and like everything's awesome versus like non-existence. And it's like if if like what dreams may come is true, then like if I'm constantly thinking to myself that the afterlife is being with Nick on some cool planet with bunnies and chocolate and stuff, is it going to be that? Or if I think the afterlife is non-existence, will it be that? And I don't know, because again, like the concept of consciousness is very weird. The concept of cosmic consciousness is very like untenable. But were those to be true, could it also be true that you're cultivating the beyond in your life? I don't know.
I think belief becomes important, or even more important, right? I don't think it's maybe not so much think, but what you truly believe.
In your heart. Bringing it back. Bringing it back.
I got one more question about Kali, though.
Yeah.
Is there anything that stakes like she's there? Because she's part of like primordial chaos and time as a full self. This implies that she's there before and after time, or is there in your research did you not touch on, or was there not too much on that?
No, you know what? Okay, so I was down the cosmology route, and then I started to be like, okay, let me read about like the creation myth of within Hinduism. But there's 4 different levels of Hinduism, and then there's like sects, and I had a hard time figuring out which was
Bhagavad
like
Gita is like 1,000 pages long.
yeah, exactly.
Like
And then there's like so
short.
many gods, and I was like, fuck, like there's no way I'm gonna get this through by the weekend. So I did cut that out, but I would happily revisit Hinduism because again, like I just there's so much information, and you know, thinking about like mudras and thinking about like how detailed and specific so much of the older texts are, there's definitely got to be something that like is going to resonate even for somebody born in like America 2020. You know what I mean? Like there's some sort of interesting overlap. So I'll definitely do an episode on just like the creation story and then how Kali enters into that for sure.
And I'll do my due diligence. Except I don't want to like send you on a research homework assignment. I mean, I was just curious if it came up or not.
Oh, there's some research. I just don't know. Like I couldn't say this is the story because I'm a little bit ignorant of like the different sects and the different like sensitivities between saying one thing's what. So yeah, but I definitely get into that. And I have 2 more stories, but I think I can just save that for another time because we're getting close to the end of this.
And to answer a little bit of your question, Mike, not all of it, Kali is the devourer of time. She actually devours time to leave the state of the universe back to its formless darkness.
But she may not have been the one that created it from the formless darkness.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I think she's more of like the vehicle back to the basically to entropy. To that beautiful vacation spot in the void.
Well, and you know, but like I love that too, that idea of time, because you know, like yeah, I mean, again, time's a human concept. So she would definitely be behind that. Or if you're dying, that's the end of your time. So yeah, time's a pretty interesting concept, even if you start looking at it through like physics kind of understanding of time and the like fable that it kind of is, like time's weird and we still don't really like if you were to hold a watch like a Swiss Army watch and you have one that's like 2 degrees off or 2 feet off the ground and you have another one that's 10 feet off the ground, a year later they're not going to be telling the same time. So like there's just tiny little deviations of error, but it's acceptable because we just keep resetting our master clocks.
Like, it would be a fun exofathom to dive down if we haven't already. I mean, I can't remember if we may have or not.
But, I mean, time can be, we could probably do a whole show just, like with multiple episodes.
Spend a lot of time.
Aspects. Yeah, exactly. Spend a lot of time talking about time.
Here's a nerd joke. We could have a time series.
There it is.
I like it.
There it is.
I'm going to go jump off a cliff now. So bad. Yes.
Just remember, you got to choose to go on or choose to come back. Now, I like Nick's idea. Just keep me on that loop.
Somebody has to see what's inside the black hole. I'm just saying.
It's not that cool. It's pretty boring. It's like, oh, hey, look, I'm here. Well, and I think that's interesting too, right? Because like that's a peacefulness and humans like drama. There's no drama beyond. Like you need events and time and people. So keeps it interesting, at least.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, that's all I got, guys. Kali.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Ayla, for bringing that episode to us. That was a lot of fun. Sorry that we had a little bit of a hiccup at the beginning, but it got into our stride, and it was a great conversation.
Awesome.
So
thanks, man.
Thank you for bringing it to the table, and thank you so much, you guys, for listening. We really appreciate it. Please consider giving us a thumbs up and a subscription to our YouTube page. It would really help us out. We just appreciate any time you take the time to listen to our episodes. We would definitely be coming back Monday. We're going to be tentatively dropping Friday for a little while just so that we can make sure that we have good episodes for you guys. And sometimes it's hard to get an episode done within a few days. And I think doing a weekly thing for now is going to be best for us. So tune in next Monday at 8 p.m. We will be talking about something that Mike decides to bring to the table. Yeah. And it should be a good conversation. Do you want to tease that out, Mike?
I got a topic. Yeah.
Tease it,
demonic. I don't think I'm just going to say it.
You could just say it too if you want.
Yeah. Demonic possessions and exorcisms.
Ooh, nice.
I've been wanting. Okay. Oh, no. It's going to be so scary. Can we do it at like 5 p.m. when it's daylight?
No,
in the middle of the night. Dark. We got to do it at 3 a.m. actually.
There you go.
It'll be 3 a.m. in some time zone. Doesn't have to be our 3 a.m.
Right.
I'm going to tell you, if I wake up at 3 a.m. the night after we talk about that, or like the morning after we talk about it, I am calling you and you're going to stay on the phone with me until I go back to sleep and I'm safe because it'll be all your fault. But no, this is going to be exciting. Exorcisms are like totally on the rise right now, so this should be fun.
Oh, yeah. Cool. It's going to be a great conversation. So you guys, please tune in next Monday at 8 p.m. We will be talking about demonic possession and exorcisms hosted by Mike. That should be a great conversation. I wanted to give a shout out to Dijon the Mustard for giving us this little comment in Indiana Jones style. I totally forgot to say Kalima.
Yeah, the mustard.
Yeah, you got to rip somebody's heart out. And,
such a fun movie.
Yeah, it is.
It's ridiculous.
Speaking of Dijon, he's got a Twitch channel now, Strawberries and Coffee. You can catch him on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 10 p.m. Be sure to also check out our friend Keelan. He's got his podcast, If Numbers Could Talk, that comes on at Tuesday nights at 6 p.m. We also have a movie podcast called Screen Time Continuum. We just reviewed The Suicide Squad last night, so you can check that out as well. But thank you so much, you guys, for tuning into this episode of Exofathom. We very much appreciate y'all. And until next time, Cognonauts, you stay out there, and we'll catch you on the next Exofathom. Good night.
Peace.
Later.